Okay, great. And feel free to jump in at any time if you hear anything or if you want to kind of be contrarian. So in the meantime, it'd be great to hear from Igor about the role that interoperability plays, since that seems to be a major emphasis. You guys have built this bridge, and it'd be good to hear about what the role that plays in terms of scalability.
Yeah, and tomorrow I will have a presentation about POA Bridge, and today is 30 days ago we launched this first two-way packet bridge between two Ethereum networks, and it was risky for many from many standpoints because those are like 5 smart contracts in 2 different networks, and you have to solve some problems take responsibilities for this token, and someone should take this. So we were very nervous before, and we did lots of security audits, and also figure out that these off-chain solutions can bring some legal implications we don't think about when we're working on-chain, because when we're working off-chain, there are entities who operate these off-chain transactions, and if we do something with tokens of something which have monetary value, it can be money service business and some other words we don't want to hear, and like AML, KYC, suspicious activity reporting, Bank Secrecy Act, and all that stuff, right? So off-chain scaling solutions can bring more questions about legal side of these computations, especially if it's related to tokens, right? POA Bridge is basically an off-chain solution. It's it's a server with threshold signatures between a group of independent validators between 2 networks, and they operate on using a designed protocol, and they lock and unlock native coins on POA network and mint and burn ERC20 representation of this token on Ethereum network, because we cannot create new native tokens out of thin air, right, on a network. And maybe it's not impressive stuff, but for me it's impressive. About 20 million of POA tokens bridged from network to network, and now this smart contract holds about 3.5 million of POA tokens, which is quite a large amount of money if you transfer it, if you convert it into other cryptocurrencies. And it's it's in public space. It's not. It's owned by token holders, and transfers achieved using consensus of independent parties. It's not the ideal bridge, right? It cannot solve all problems of token transfers. It cannot transfer ERC20 for now. We're working on this and cannot transfer some other scalability type of tokens like ERC7 to 1 for CryptoKitties type of games. But what I can say after a month of operations, we launched this bridge and did nothing, and people just use it, right? The token connected on both sides to exchanges, different type of exchanges, and one big problem it solves is how to get access to liquidity of Ethereum mainnet for new networks, for side chains, for all these new consensus algorithms. And second question is how to move tokens back, right? To side chains to get access to these computations. So basically we have 2 on-chain solutions and 1 off-chain solution between them, but which operates on trustless, semi-trustless, and decentralized way. I think interoperability is more important than scalability, because scalability is we have scalability, right? We have if we think about Ethereum, we have Expanse, Ubiq, Classic, POA. Anyone can launch a POA-based network at the moment. Well, Cosmos soon, and some other EVM-based network, Qtum. What else? Maybe I forgot, but lots of EVM, Rootstock, right? So we have all these scalability solutions, and they're very inexpensive, but how to make them usable. So from my perspective, it's interoperability first, and second is developer experience. So if you want to, just think about this. You want to as a dev shop, you want to make a token for your client, and client asking to verify this token on Etherscan. Are you saying, oh, sorry, I'm on Classic. Oh, no Etherscan for Classic. Yeah, so that's how are you going to sell it, right? So you will recommend Ethereum all the time, right? You will not recommend other scalability solution because you will not get money, right?
Yeah, Igor, we talked about this. We're both building our own protocols from kind of ground zero, and there just is not a lot of infrastructure in the space. It's pretty easy to take 15 minutes and spin up an ERC20 and throw some cool marketing around it and go to the moon. It's incredibly challenging to, from ground zero, rethink the future of payments and programmability in the payments sector. And so we sort of struggle with that. You know, there's not a lot of tools out there, and we have to do a lot of things behind the scenes to that are not necessarily directly like on the path to execution of the core consensus algorithm to enable these ecosystems to go. So the world's much bigger than Ethereum. Ethereum's an incredible experiment that will have a huge future ahead of it. It has to solve layer 1 before it goes to layer 2. That's our take. But there's room for a lot more innovation where new scalability solutions will exist with decentralization, and I think that's why we're all here. In the absence of true decentralization, you could sort of make the case that it's cheating or it's just like fake, and so those take novel approaches. So I think the scalability conversation, we're going to be having it in 10 years.
Great. And do we have a microphone in the audience? Do we have any questions from the audience? This is going to be the Q&A time. Does anyone have a question? If not, we'll just keep, you can raise your hand and we can bring the mic to you. Yeah, was that you? Yeah. So if you have a question, maybe just bring it up to this gentleman. Okay, in the meantime, maybe if you guys want to share more about something other than your own project, a solution that you've seen out there, right? Other than your own that you've been really impressed with, where you see it as having been very promising.
Yeah, our project is a big fan of Rayblock's Nano. I think they've taken a unique approach with sort of 8 validators that have these representatives, near zero fee, very high throughput. That's a project to take a close look at if you like scalability and novel solutions.
Great, great. Yeah, who else has got some thoughts on that?
Sure, I really like Oasis and their white paper Ekiden. So they've not only built out their blockchain, but they've also tested 5D apps. So in their white paper, they've got a lot of the performance reports, so their throughput, their latency, and their transaction fees. So it's worth reading, and it's one of the most impressive white papers I've read.
So I'm interested in those kind of like a DAG-based in parallel consensus for improving the on-chain scalability. Because like currently in between this kind of block time, you can only you cannot parallel those stuff. And this is a great idea to see how DAG can go far, how far it can go, and to solve the problem. And the second is like you think about scalability, but the problem is like when you scale, there's lots of transactions per second. How do you store that? So there's like an idea. It's like using kind of like using zero-knowledge proof to actually compress the stuff. So so the problem currently for blockchain is like you record all of the history, and then later you can replay it. And so if you replay it between a period of time, you replay it and then building a proof, then you doesn't need to store all of the history. You just need to, you have some full node, but you doesn't need to have all of the node at full node. So that's also a great idea to see. Yeah.
So I think there are two categories of two categories of solutions. One is like on-chain, and then there's like whatever is not consensus is what people call off-chain solutions. And I think for all these off-chain solutions, many of them are like actually very complementary to each other and can work together. So I would just name one example here, that is TrueBit. So TrueBit is a pretty cool project that is focusing on the computation itself. Like basically, let's say you're computing something super hard on blockchain. You don't want like the EVM to compute it for you, so you just compute it offline and then put the result on the chain and do like a binary challenge, basically. So that particular piece of work that we actually start to look into and use in Cetera as well, because for us, in many cases, we also want to accelerate the settlement of the channels and side chains. And for those cases, that kind of a style, not necessarily using the true bit itself, but that kind of a style of commit and challenge is something that is very interesting, I would say. But again, I think anything that is other than the optimization or improvement on the consensus algorithm is going to interoperate and cooperate basically in the scalability world.
Great. Yeah, and Igor, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to add that from what I see from other projects, many projects trying to implement their own new consensus algorithms, right? It's like implementing your own cryptography sometimes, right? But also there is a gap between academic and open source project at the moment, some people can just take good enough existing algorithm, or they can try to implement something that exists only in papers, right? We, on our side, for us, underlying consensus was not the most important part, but we spent some R&D onto exploring how to implement some academic research, and we just finished the first phase of implementing very promising asynchronous BFT protocol, Honey Badger BFT, and did some tests and figure out that this is actually that can be very beneficial for the network. And also when you implement some novel academic paper, you can get some insights about what your network is and how can you improve it and figure out to split something. Let's say in our use case, we never thought about splitting reward per block and creation time of block. And now I understand that with Honey Badger we can get, if we don't have transactions, we can have very, very fast blocks. But if we have lots of transactions, we can have increase in transaction per second. But reward can be calculated in smart contracts. And if block time took, 1 minute to create because of some DDoS attack on the network, validators will receive reward every 5 seconds, how it's described into economic model. Right, so that's something you don't think about when you don't implement new ideas, and that's what I would like to see from other projects. Not to create your own cryptography or consensus algorithm. Look into but don't implement hashgraph because it's very protected by patents. So all other algorithms I know they're much less protected. Want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's not just scalability we need to get right. We need to get decentralization right. We need to get the efficient allocation of block rewards across a complex network. And to get all those to work in a high throughput environment where you have latency across nodes. I think you mentioned about who stores the data, right? There's innovation there. There's innovation in layer 2 if it's sort of natively baked in, I think, into the protocol itself. So there's a role master nodes can play where they actually have real utility, not just sort of economic upside for stakers, but they actually provide a service for layer 2. But to get this technology correct, we have to be very honest. It's hard, and it's long term, and it takes wild experimentation, and you have to be willing to be wrong, and you have to be willing to go against consensus, or we call it status quo. And I think next generation projects that are coming out post Affinity, post Tezos, are doing that, and we're seeing that on the ground layer. So if anyone knows of a cool project that we haven't talked about here, please tell us. We love to study everything really, really carefully. And the last thing I'll say is we've done a pretty thorough analysis of modern day consensus algorithms. So if you go to storecoin.com/compare, there's a pretty good data set there that we validated in terms of transactions per second, decentralization, transaction fees, governance systems, security systems, patents. It's open source. Use it however. If you find an error, tell us. But it's a pretty good place to go to just get really good research. We've put a lot of time into that.
Great. We've got a minute left. We got a lightning round, closing thoughts. Mo, anyone? Kingsley, final thoughts?
I think in the future we'll see many different blockchains, and I see people building applications plugging into different blockchains like APIs.
Well, so I think like there has been a layer 1 blockchain competition or war going on for a while. But this year and later this year, I'm hoping that like basically the off-chain scaling solution can bring blockchain application to actually achieve like mass adoption. That's our goal.
Great. All right. Well, that's all the time we have. So thank you very much to our panel for joining us.
Thanks.